I do want to talk about global. So I like, you know, Sosti is coming in from a global perspective. Danny, you're focusing on Dish domestically. Justine, you have an audience all across the world, though I'm assuming mostly you're thinking U.S., mostly U.S. centric. Marta, you know, you guys have audiences across the world, but again, you're, you know, looking U.S. based, though you are global. Where do we start losing that definition of domestic versus global? When does that start to happen, or are we always going to be thinking about a U.S.-based opportunities for marketers and then global opportunities?
No, what I think is interesting is from the marketer's perspective and when they thought about video until recently, it was always a very local, the television ecosystem is very local. It doesn't cross frontiers. We start thinking globally with marketers when, you know, when the internet came about, and we could deploy the same strategies holistically about all of the different countries with, you know, with different local customizations. What's going on video allows for video and for content to become global, and for marketers to leverage that at a global scale. It's super early in that space. We haven't done video at a global scale, and yet if you think about how some of this content and some of these shows and how Hollywood has grown and all of the different specific areas where there are content creators, it is a global movement. Consumers are reacting globally. A show that works in the US has a huge probability to work in other places. For example, Connected, which is the show that we are, the first long-form show that we are producing, is a very successful television show all across Europe that we are bringing exclusively on the web, right? So doing all of that experimentation and doing it with global advertising partners at scale is, I think, what's going to start to open very exciting moments because we're finally going to take television global.
Right. Justine, when is the eye going to be international, Justine?
I mean, it is, and it's one of those things where I didn't actually realize it. I mean, I obviously knew that there were people around the world watching. I went to, my first real example of it is I went to Norway, and I looked at my analytics of the people in Norway, and I was like, oh, there's nobody here that watches. So I was like, I tweeted, I posted something on Facebook, and I said I was doing a meetup at this location. So I show up at that location, there's security guards, there's cops, there's like basically a mini riot happening because they all showed up, and it was kind of overwhelming, and I realized that there are people absolutely everywhere. And then I tried that same thing in Iceland recently, and it's like these kids show up because a lot of times a lot of the people from the US and a lot of the YouTubers and content creators don't necessarily travel or do meetups. So when they do, they come out of the woodwork. And it's extremely interesting too as far as doing things on TV and having to think that that's not going to be an international segment. I'll post things that I tweet out that's in another country and they can't actually watch it because it's blocked. So what I love about even just Instagram and Facebook and all of these things, not necessarily even creating video content, is a picture it will cross any language barrier. You're not saying anything, but you're saying so much with just an image. So that's what I love about being on Instagram specifically, because you can tell so much and it doesn't matter. There's no language barrier.
Anything you want to say to your fans in Reykjavik?
I love you guys. I'll be back soon.
Sosti, what about you?
So it's I mean, we go through this daily, and we've actually done a lot of work on definition of global, and really we see our marketing as local and hyper local. It's just that when you're sitting on a global role, hyper local means the entire world. Like you have the entire world as your playground, right? An interesting observation though is when you're talking about online content, whether that's imagery, whether that's video, any kind of content, there's some elements that are natural elements that connect with consumers in different geographies. And that's, the foundational elements of a video that you see that goes really, really, viral quickly. It doesn't happen only in one geography. There's multiple consumers in multiple geographies that are engaging with that piece of content. So for us in campaigns that are truly global, like World Cup, for example, is finding what's the best way to communicate certain things in a non-language way and get consumers around the world to get the same value from a piece of content. That's very difficult to do all the time. There's only natural moments in sort of a brand's calendar that you can do that in multiple countries. But in most instances is finding the local relevance and then seeing what are similar characteristics in other parts of the world that we can use elements of what we created and keep that chain of creation going.
Danny, any thoughts on global approaches?
I mean, we share a lot of our best practices in the U.S. to the other markets for their implementation and ideation. So I agree with them. Like, you know, there's elements and common threads that's happening all over, but you just got to tweak it and take that learning and customize it to the local markets.
Got it. Great. Well, thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.